Today with us, we have Dr. Kanika Aggarwal, and she's currently assistant professor at Bennett University. And she has been a consultant in research at UNDP, right? And that is one of the most important part, right? Along with it, she did her PhD from University of Southern California. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for sparing some time and having this podcast with us.
Thanks very much. And thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, ma'am. Tell us something about your experience. Okay, and I'll begin with your time from PhD at Southern California. Okay, the reason I'm starting with that is something that most of the aspirants they would love to know, solely because I have been interacting with many students. Okay, they have this wish that they want to go abroad and pursue their PhD from there, right? And I can't find, of course, there are many, but this Southern California University is one of the best options for them, right? So what about your experience over there?
All right. So I would like to go like a year just before, like I started.
Absolutely.
The thing is that I did my master's from Delhi University, which is Delhi School of Economics, as many of us aspire to and end up in. The idea was that I always wanted to do a PhD.
Right.
And the reason that I wanted to talk to you is also, so your first question is very related to what's going to follow, hopefully, because I did not know what I was getting into, although at that time I was fully confident that I knew. So this is one of the things that I think most of us face. We have an idea, which is mostly amorphous, like, what it would be, what we think that our seniors were doing, and what we think our professors had the experience of, and we club it together. We have an idea and we call it this would be our PhD experience, but it is very different, both from the professional viewpoint as well as from the personal viewpoint. So my experience with University of Southern California, coming to your question, was very good. This was my first time stepping out of my country, stepping out of my state, for that matter, when it came to education. So it was a very, very new experience, but I think more so from the point of view of, the pedagogy, what we were taught, how we were taught, what exactly did we go through. So everybody knows that in a typical PhD program in a US university, you would go through a very rigorous coursework, at the end of which there would be a sort of a difficult examination, which you require to sort of pass, and then, you can begin with your work in earnest. But I would really say that the first 2 years were actually were the greatest of my experience. It contained a lot of learning. The coursework really shaped me because I really became I transitioned, I would say, that from a typical student to somebody who would open up their mind to even considering, okay, if this is what is going on, then what can I do about it? So that is what the coursework does to you. So do not be intimidated, or do not think that that is something that you have to, just get done with. The first year is something that you get done with, or the second year. And after that, really, what will happen is that after your second year, once your coursework begins to fizzle out and you're just taking a couple of electives, if any, is that, you would, retreat to your shells, start thinking about what you want to work on, and then start your research, which would be a more isolatory process. Now, I was in USC, which is in Los Angeles, and USC is also in downtown LA. So imagine a PhD student in the middle of a party crowd. So this is what my life was. And USC is, sort of known for being a fun place, so to speak. So I would say it's both good and bad, because I couldn't participate, but at the same time, I was in the middle of a lot of humdrum, which is not the case in most universities, because they're sort of like college towns, and they're smaller and quieter and stuff like that. So you should be prepared. I would say make more friends, make the best of your first 2 years when you're there, and when and while doing your PhD. be as normal in living as a person would, as opposed to, just figuring out what you want to do or what your work is about, spend your weekends outside. I mean, it's become sort of an advisory, more of an experience rather than, but my point being that it's very subjective, what your experience is. It really depends on the location. And this is something that one of my professors at D school actually told me, because, USC doesn't figure in one of those top places where one could go. And so he said, but you're in LA. So, whenever you're picking up universities, be heartened about the fact that you're also picking up a good location, and it really helps. And the weather, I mean, it was, so, all these things really matter for Indian people, Indian women, your exposure to that sort of a life where you can do many things which were not possible here, both professionally as well as personally, is something that you should keep in mind while selecting and going for your PhDs.
Okay, great. Because the one point that students face is like, of course, you're going to do PhD. So you already reached a level, right? You have done your master's. But at the same time, moving out of your country, moving out of your kind of comfort zone as well at times, it becomes kind of a bit tough to handle both the things, the curriculum at PhD level, of course, along with moving out to another country altogether, right? So I guess, especially in your case, the additional factor was living in LA, still not able to going out and at least enjoy that part as well. Okay, great. So I don't know, to what an extent, if you could answer this, was there, after interacting with so many PhD scholars in India as well, right? Was there a difference in doing PhD in India and abroad? And to what an extent was the difference like? And in what aspects, if you could just share that?
Yeah, so one thing, let's make this very, very clear. We hold certain ideals in our life, like maybe an Ivy League, if not an Ivy League, top 20 universities where we can go to. Another ideal that we hold in our life, which is not really even related to economics, is that, you end up getting a foreign degree or a foreign education, or going to a foreign country, a good country, and for your higher education, versus what you would think are like very good institutions in India and ending up there. Please, this is, you would say that this is just my opinion, and there are so many others who wouldn't agree.
That's okay.
Yeah, but just be chill. It's okay. It's as long as you know that you want to do a PhD and what it is roughly going to be about.
Right.
It's okay. I would say just look for good people, good advisors, good people who you look forward to talking and meeting and not intimidated with. Right. An institution which gives you their infrastructure. Like, because I'm from University of Delhi through and through, so I really appreciate a good infrastructure. Having said that, I never felt that, it lacking very grossly when I was there. So it's not as if it's the absence that would really, sort of pinch you. Now, to compare it, of course, the two things are very different. One is your own personal experience, as you said, this cultural aspect, your personal aspect, you living on your own, figuring out life with roommates, your friends, so many things which build your character as a person. So I would say if you've never lived out in your entire life, let's say when you're working or when you were in a hostel or something, I think you should definitely go. If not to another country, then maybe just shift your states. Right. Now, that's one thing. Now, coming to the professional point, from the education point, curriculum point, academic point, the US is, I'm just talking about United States specifically. They are one of the places where a lot of research is happening on the cutting edge all the time. And this is just the fact. This is just the reality of the world. Everywhere else, we're a little behind. And this includes Europe as well. So now what happens is that when you're there, you're exposed to things which you wouldn't be here. So that's a plus. Now, the second thing is that you will get a better infrastructure. You will get softwares that you can access, which your university would most likely provide. You would probably get, some sort of a room or a cubicle or an office space where you can interact, meet people. You will obviously also be getting funding, if you go about it the right way,
Correct.
which is basically a little more than what one would, sort of think when in an Indian institution. One thing that I had a personal issue with, something I don't know, I'm probably putting it out there through this podcast, is that the UGC net,
Correct.
this
In India.
entire web of UGC net, we were all bewildered by that examination, and that's everybody who ended up doing their PhDs here or outside.
Right.
This was an exam that we were sort of faced with as soon as we finished our masters, and we were like, what is it about? It's so totally different from what you study. So, so such things, and this is what you have to cross to get to a PhD in India. Having said that, just a small hurdle. It's not like a big deal. It's one of those things. So the difference lies in that they look at your research approach or your research interests, whereas in India, as with most of the things, there is a qualifying exam, which also sort of maybe makes sense because of our population and the level of, there is only some way to filter out people who would like to do something, right? Yeah, so it's a rational approach, nonetheless. So once you are in, look for good people, right? So when I'm saying that it was better obviously because they're richer. They can provide you better resources, both in terms of your stipend, your research assistantship. That's another nice thing that from what I understand, in most of the places in US, you will get research assistantship or teaching assistantship, which would really, really help you figure out what you want to do next, how to, go about your things. And it also sort of adds some sort of a niceness to your life there because you're engaged in doing some work as well. In India, again, the experience of the people have been good, but it's a totally different life. It's more of it's less of something that you're completely and 24/7 associated with. A lot of my friends were also already assistant professors in various places while they were doing their PhD. This is something that you don't find in the US. You're just working within your department. So these are some of the things.
Okay, great. So yeah, so it will kind of help the upcoming students who want to pursue their PhD, but of course they will get a rough idea at least if they want to do it from India or abroad, right? And the point that you highlighted about the NET exam, okay, and I agree to that fact solely because how much theoretical it is. If someone is coming with so much practical knowledge, it's very hard to remember at times who discovered this theory or who wrote this book. Okay, so I agree.
It came out.
So it is a bit unfair at times to students, but of course, the sole reason is the filtering point. You need to have filters at different stage to make sure that the desired students, the students get into the next level of that. Okay. So, ma'am, now coming to the point that when you were there, right, I guess from there you were able to identify different aspects of economics, not only your usual economics. Now in India alone, you have applied, you have dev eco, you have international eco, you have environmental eco, not as a subject, but as a specialization as well, right? And of course, there are certain more areas that will keep on coming, but I guess the US in particular is far ahead in that. So what's your take in our education system when we are coming with different specializations in different aspects of economics?
See, so my take is that we need to know about these areas as soon as possible in our careers and educational system.
Right.
What happens is that, again, speaking as a DU student, we are exposed to a very good curriculum in our undergrad as well as our masters. And that sort of paves the way to knowing many fields. Now, the problem that I thought I faced was that I did not know the areas of research in those fields. There were always subjects, you know the theory behind these subjects, you know where they sort of came from, but you wouldn't know what can you do in terms of research. So that's one thing. The other thing that my perspective is that now the world is going interdisciplinary. And I would say for good, because it has been it's been long coming. It's been a very long time that people have been staying in their ivory towers. very isolated. So I feel as researchers, it is incumbent upon us to make our research more accessible to everybody, a historian, an anthropologist, a chemist, an aerospace engineer, everybody. And so is theirs, by the way, because everything now, eventually I would like to give an example on climate change, maybe a bit later into the discussion. So you see that climate change is a very multidisciplinary problem. And how does one even imagine coming up with any fruitful understanding or research or solution if you do not know the strands of economics that you can work on? There could be an engineer who could do a PhD in economics.
Correct.
There could be a mathematician who could do there are many people. So now that I'm working with School of Management at Bennett University, and this is my first time with a management school. I was always associated with departments of economics before.
Right.
And I see a huge difference because these people are very practical. Their approach is, industry exposure. Now, I realize that maybe this is when they talk about it, you basically realize, oh, okay, so this person has done his MBA or a specialization in marketing, and now he or she would like to study, let's say, income inequality. And so how do you go about it? So, but their approach is not that bad either, because maybe they end up with a CSR department in a company, and that is they would be making some ground change. So this is something that we really need to address. Now, just to start from the very beginning, because I prepared some notes on this, is that what we understand is micro and macro, right? So everything sort of comes from there. This is what we are first exposed to even in the school. So micro is looking at things individually, and macro is when you look at things as a whole. And when you start looking into both of these things, when you start studying these things, you realize that they're actually talking about the same thing, but from two different lenses, right? So I can either talk about the output of McDonald's, or I can talk about the food industry in India, right? So such examples, or coming up with something a little more, I can talk about prices of tomatoes, or I can talk about inflation level in India, right? So, individual as well as group, the whole perspective, right? So this is what micro and macro was. The idea, I would say, was to define certain theory that would help people build models, which would help answer certain questions, right? But again, the basic is that we are dealing with scarcity. We are dealing with the problem of how to distribute resources, be it within a company, be it within a population, or be it in a larger area or a larger group. So this was one thing that I wanted to talk about, is that anybody who aspires to do a PhD, anybody who aspires to do research in economics are usually not aware, especially in India, because we are very, pedagogy focused system. We do not know what area would lead to what strand of research. So I thought that, we can talk a bit about that. There are theories, right? So micro theory, macro theory, game theory, econometric theory. These are theories. And just like in any other field, they are just axioms. They are just mathematical axioms, or the ideas that we create into which our models should fit into, or our world should ideally fit into. Correct? So this is what theory is. Now, obviously, some of them are more like, so when you talk about econometric or game theory, they're mathematics based. They're more scientific than when you're talking about micro or macro, because they deal with human behavior, which is subjective, and so on and so forth. Right? Now, what I would like to talk about is certain areas in micro, and so on and so forth. I will go from there. That we kind of look at as subjects. Maybe some of these names you might not have heard even before. So things like consumer behavior, consumer theory, and from there, behavioral economics is one part of what you can do if you pursue micro as one of your specializations. Right? The other thing is you can go into market strategy, price strategy, market structures, which we call as industrial organization, or IO. Now,
Right.
IO has become in itself a major strand, which can then branch out to many other strands.
Correct.
The reason being that we are going digital now.
Exactly.
So in order to understand Amazon versus the workings of a telecommunication industry versus the workings of a cement industry, these are very different things.
Completely different. Right.
Because of the approach, because of the technology, because of
Market as
the
well,
output.
right.
Yes,
Right.
and just the tangibleness of the good
Exactly.
that we're talking about, right?
Right.
So an output of Facebook is very different from an output of a cement industry, is very different from an output of a telecom industry, which talks about these antennas and wires and
spectrum and all. Right.
Yeah. So this is the difference that you understand when you start working on it and you decide what kind of area that you would like to go in. So what one should focus as a PhD student is on your question. Don't focus on, oh, I want to work in IO. Oh, I want to work in micro, or I want to work in development. Why do you want to work in development if that question that you would like to ask can be answered through another field, even physics maybe. So just study. So look at your question first, then decide your field. What happens is, as soon as you will hit your second year in your PhD, people will start, they actually start on the first, so the first round of interviews, introductions that we had when we were sitting in the class, and all the professors who would come, they would ask us, naam batao and area batao.
Area of
yes. So they would be like, please give us an introduction, and it should be about what you would like to work in, or what have you decided. And this is the most difficult question. And I was very amazed that most of my classmates knew the answer. And I did not. Now, it could be a very obviously an individual issue. But my point being, and whatever we think we'll end up doing, most of us changed our fields, by the way. So, so this happens. So some brief idea of what you would like to work in. Even this is an advice for people who are writing their SOPs. Instead of saying, look, I want to work in IO, or I am into environmental economics, say that these are the questions that I would like to answer.
Okay.
Now, the tools that I can use could be from macro theory, micro theory, or game theory, or neurobiology. So, so this is what I would say the approach should be about the question. So,
just to add to your point, this point that you highlighted, that you should ask why you want to do it, what you want to do it, the problem question, that actually begins at your master's thesis level itself. In the second year, when you're provided that you need to do thesis, all these things are mentioned to you. But the thing is, not all student wants to do PhD, say they don't give that much emphasis to that, and they just want to just complete their thesis, right? Because that is the very first stage when you are introduced to such kind of scenarios at the master's second year, if I'm not wrong. Exactly, second year, right?
Yeah. So, you're absolutely right. And now that you're talking about the master's students, because I was thinking more in terms of the PhD students, you're absolutely right. So this is, even as, somebody who has a degree in economics, forget master's, even at bachelor's level, they should know, because even when you're having a conversation, or even in your careers going forward, not necessarily in research, you should very well have an idea of, these classifications and where do you stand. Because of tomorrow, again, a claim comes to you that reducing so many cars on Delhi road will lead to a reduction in the pollution levels by this much, and will say Delhi government this much money. You should know what papers to look at, or what areas to go into such questions, because these are claims. So you'll be like, acha, theek hai. So maybe, this is a matter of public economy or public finance. And public economics is a great subject, which is dying out slowly nowadays, because not a lot of people pick it up. But the problem of government allocating resources, that is what public economics is about, is a very important part of our work. And another thing that I wanted to say was, now, one big thing that's coming on is environmental or energy economics, right? Now, according to you, which area would you slot it in? Will it be micro, macro? What sort of a thing did you think, what broad subjects that you named even before? What would it fall under?
Look, if you want between micro and macro, then of course at macro level it should be. But overall, students go for environmental economics because they feel that's more specialization in that. But having said that, I have seen the curriculum. They haven't integrated the latest techniques. Okay. When I say latest technique, it means using of EV, using of wind power, using of solar energy, and let alone India, not of course global level they have, especially the Germans use the wind energy. At Indian level, only in Gujarat state they use the solar part, right? They are working on the wind energy as well. So what I'm trying to say, even though it should be overall, it should be macro part, okay? But in terms of specialization, environmental economics, rest you can explain much better than me, right?
Yeah, no, so this is where the confusion lies.
Okay.
You are absolutely right. And this is exactly how you should approach. You are looking at what is happening in the world, and then you're coming back to the subject. This is exactly what I was saying. Do that.
Okay.
What you will never know which slot will it fit into. And ideally you should not, unless you start exploring your question. So if actually it is a question about EVs or access to a spread of hydroelectric power plants or wind-based energy solutions, then you say, okay, what all do I need to study? You probably even need to study law. You probably even need to study micro theory. You need to study game theory. You need to study macro. Now, I'm taking the climate example and I'll tell you why exactly. Now, you have a question. Let's say that has climate change affected potato production in Maharashtra region in India? Now, this question would fall under development economics.
Okay.
The approach that you would take would be microeconomic theory.
Okay.
Or applied econometrics, which is you gather your variables and run some regression.
Correct.
Right. But what is the behind that applied econometrics? You're using an equation which says potato production is a function of atmosphere.
Correct.
Now that equation has come from micro theory.
Okay. Right.
Because
exactly. The parameters you come from that.
Cost. It is a function of inputs. It is a function of labor. It is a function. So that has come from micro theory. So you have already used econometrics. You've already used micro theory.
Micro as well.
Now, yes, right. Now you talk about the impact on potato production because there have been certain imports from Brazil in potato. So you've included international trade.
Right.
Okay. Now we go forward and you say that what it really matters is whether there's a minimum support price on potatoes or if there is a government intervention which subsidizes the farmers in potato production. You have included public economics. You have also included taxation theory. You've already gotten 4 subjects. Now, there is a claim made by some scientists that if the temperature goes above 2 degrees Celsius on an average in the world, we are going to have unusually hot weather in Maharashtra. So you've already included climate science.
Exactly.
Okay. Now you say that, okay, macroeconomists, what do they do in environmental economics? As you pointed out, that macro would be the first thing that I would think of. What they have done is they've said, if in the world, global warming happens to this extent, then my GDP declines to this extent. Or I can still continue to enhance my GDP if I do energy transition. So that is moving from fossil fuels to wind, to EV, to this and that. So you are then including macro. So in the potatoes, in let's say Wardha region, Maharashtra, you have included everything. And this is what you should know. And this is what we should work on as teachers or as instructors or as anybody, as podcast managers of for the audience who are
Right,
interested in
right.
working in economics and knowing about or reading about economics. So this is what it is. So, I hope you see the entire idea
It was a
that
beautiful example, honestly speaking, coming up with potato itself. It shows that there's a huge ecosystem of economics alone, wherein so many elements are coming in. Right, right. And
precisely.
just correct, just one point that this shows that there is a need, there is a demand, there is a requirement of economists, not only in India, across the globe, and in different spheres, in different aspects as well. That if India is not giving much weightage to, let's say, environmental economics, but the other countries are giving. So you can come up with your own views and help the government sector or private sector in defining certain areas, like you mentioned, the prices of potato, or it can be anything, right?
This is very important point that you've made. It's a very, very important point that you've made because, and I would say, as we were talking about before, this is one of the key differences in US and India, and it has its reasons, which we would not go into so much. But the idea is that there is a diversity of experts in the US. You would even find a potato expert in the US, right? So there is a diversity of experts because obviously they have resources and there's so much, so many things and so much of scope to do various things. But this is very important. This is very much needed in our country.
Mm.
Even if you're talking about potato, you need the opinions of at least 10 experts from 10 different domains. So to either build your knowledge, to know where you're coming from as a policymaker, as a future, even a corporate employee who is going to be even a consumer of those potatoes, you need to know so much. And obviously it's not possible, but I would say that, let's say as a postgraduate student of economics, you should aspire to start beginning to understand what all has gone into this. And from my own experience, I'm telling you, and maybe also from the people who were my batchmates, who were around me at that time, we did not have a very good understanding of these things. All that we bothered was with whether or not we were doing our PhD was, I like the subject.
Good. That's important.
And it's very, like, I used to really like theory of economic growth. Now, economic growth theory actually was a foundational stone on which all these models of climate change were built on. Like there's a discounting of future, and on the basis of which you decide, and then people are like, because climate is going to damage everything, the discounting could be higher. So this entire idea, which comes essentially from mathematics and macroeconomics, has been fed into climate change economics. You should know that. We should all know that.
Yeah.
So ask questions and see to which all subjects or disciplines that question leads you to.
Great, great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Like before we wrap up, if you have anything for students that you would like to share in terms of different aspects of economics, like we have already discussed the importance that one should try and gain as much knowledge as possible in a particular domain, right? Of course, universities are coming up with different specialization that I mentioned earlier as well, right? So if there is anything that you could suggest to students, like in a small,
Yeah. Actually, I have, so recently I have also been very, very small student of Vedant recently. And when I read some of the things there, I have come to understand something which is very, very important to human existence, which is that everybody wants to know what work should they do. And I think it was Carl Jung who said that, it was Ayn Rand, I think. Okay. She said that your work is going to define your entire life. What you do is what you are. Right. And I completely agree with them because, believe it or not, there are concepts of work-life balance, there are concepts of, 3-day work week time, but that's not the point. Even if I'm not going to the office, I'm still working on something. Exactly. you can even work on eating a pizza. So that's not the point. The point is what you do with your life and time.
Right.
And so coming from there, now what do you do? And that is the question that people who are 20-year-olds they're late teens or young adults, this is what the question that they're dealing with. मैं ऐसा क्या करूं जो fruitful है? What is it that I need to do which is fruitful?
Right.
Now, fruitful comes under many ambits. I should be able to get money. I should be successful. My parents should be happy. Society should give me certain respect. And I should maybe be able to make an impact in the world. Right?
Right.
All these things come under the umbrella of being fruitful. Now, please understand that do what is needed in the world as opposed to what you would like to do. A lot of us are fed into this idea that follow your passion.
Right.
Now, that's still a lesser thing as compared to what is required. Now, when I say required, it's not as if you start rescuing animals your entire life, or you start, helping in the old age homes. Every time you say something is required, people start thinking about charity. No.
Right.
When I say that something is required is what is going to make you and the entire world a bearable person, a bearable world.
Right.
And again, to be very practical, what I feel is that please work on climate change. Please work on mental health. Please just be a little more, have more depth on what you think where this world is going to. Think about artificial intelligence, what's it going to do. So just have some depth.
But don't think too much whether it will take away your jobs or not, or else you will start taking tension further because of AI.
That's true, but it's important to know because if you actually don't do what I'm trying to, sort of put it out there, if you don't try to see what is needed, you'll actually end up working in a job which you'll be replaced by one, because that's the mechanical answer that is coming to you. So don't go by the mechanics. That's what I would say. And that's what I think the message of Bhagavad Gita was somewhere that, Krishna says that I don't need to do anything in this world. There's nothing left that I want to achieve or attain, or there's nothing that I can't attain. He's talking about these things. And then he says, yet I work.
Right.
So this is how he's basically, sort of urging Arjun to fight the war. Right. And he's like, so, okay, let it be a purposeless thing. Just fight. Now, purposeless is a word which is very badly understood. But the idea of his point was that following passion or looking at what other people are doing, conditioning this, that, your wishes, all of this is subservient to the greatest of the things, which is, even if you don't want anything out of it, what is it that you would do?
Great. Amazing.
So, and economics gives you a huge amount of scope, because that helps a lot of people, a lot of countries, a lot of policymakers determine what's going to happen in future. So
I guess it's a huge scope. Of course, there is huge scope, and there are n number of options that are available. And I guess the discussion can be endless in this stream for sure. Okay. Just before I close, I just wanted to ask, like you mentioned, you have now moved to the School of Management from the economics part, right? So how's economics overall at Bennett University? Of course, at bachelor's level as well and master's level as well.
So in Bennett University, economics is taught in two schools. One is School of Management, another one is School of Liberal Arts. So I am with School of Management. The degree that School of Management offers is BBA and MBA, which is Bachelor's of Business Administration and Master's in Business Administration. So as a lot of you would know, as you would know that both of these consider economics to be a core foundational subject, right? But this is not one of the areas of specialization as of now. However, in School of Liberal Arts, this is one of the areas of specialization. So if you would like to pursue economics, you should go for a program in economics or in liberal arts. If you would like to have an overall view of how how business works and how economics fits into it,
Into that.
then you should go for a degree like BBA or a
BBA.
BBE,
Right.
right? So again, it depends on what you would like to do. So think
Correct.
about what you would like to do. It also depends on, now actually I was a very staunch Department of Economics person, like economics, like bachelor's in economics. But
Right.
ever since I made this transition, and not that I'm trying to actually sort of sell it or something, it has taught me that an interdisciplinary approach is sort of very important, because you miss out on a lot of information. So if you think that you are going to go on the management business side, then maybe a BB or a BBE. If you think you're going to go on social sciences, humanities,
Right.
is what you would like to sort of take it forward, then go for liberal arts. And these are some two areas, especially liberal arts, which has opened up like anything in India now.
Yeah. Right.
And these are opportunities that you can get which you were not able to before. So think about that. Go through these college websites, whoever offers liberal arts, see what the curriculum is. Yes. And they let you specialize in two subjects. Let's say you can specialize in economics and sociology, or economics and music, maybe. Right. So depending on which university, what courses do they have. Right. So, these are certain things.
Great. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much once again for your time. And it was pleasure talking to you. It was so insightful, especially when you explain certain scenarios, structures through examples, and that too day-to-day related examples. It makes things pretty easier for the audience to understand. So thank you so much, ma'am, for this, your time and for joining in this session. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much for asking me to do this.